All right, hello, it's Gabriel again with Carini Heating, Air and Plumbing. Today we're going to talk about hard water. Now we've all heard that term and most of us know what that means. I mean, there's a perfect example of hard water right here around this faucet. You can see the buildup, and some of you may notice that buildup on your fixtures at home, on the glass in your shower enclosures, on your stemware when you wash your dishes. And what that means when they say hard is that it's calcium carbonate or limestone. And so the reason why we have a lot of limestone in our water is because of how we get our water. So here in San Diego, most of what we consume in our homes is delivered from the Colorado River. Now the Colorado River, what happens is along the way through the aqueducts, the concrete that is in the aqueducts uses lime to cure the concrete. So along the way, we all know that water is absorbent. So along the way, what happens is it picks up that calcium carbonate along the way, and then it's delivered to us at our homes. Now, the problem is that our local water districts, they can't treat. It's not financially possible to treat all the water that we get in our home. 90% of the water that the water districts produce actually gets used in commercial and in watering homes, in fighting fires, things like that. So we only get about 10% of the water as actually goes to the home, and 0.5% of that we use for consumption or drinking. So the water districts are not going to treat for these contaminants. So today we're going to do a couple of tests to show you exactly why and how hard your water is here in San Diego. So I'm here at a kitchen in San Diego, the city of San Diego, and the first test that I'm going to do is going to, what it does is it bonds to anything that's still in the water. So any hard particulates that are in the water are actually we're going to bond them, and then we're going to add a dye so that we can see what's floating around in the water. So I've got two sources of water here. I've got an RO alkaline drinking water source, and then I have good old-fashioned tap water. So with my first tube here, I'm going to add the RO alkaline water, and this water is pH balanced and it's been treated through reverse osmosis. So this is for your drinking. This other water here, as you can see, is our tap hard water. So we're going to do a test on this as well. And what we're going to do is we're going to add a solution. This solution here actually bonds to anything that's suspended in the water, okay? So we're going to do 10 drops of each. 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then what this is doing is it's bonding to it, and then the dye here is going to then dye the material. Okay, so we're going to let those sit for a while, but as you can see, you can already see that the untreated tap water is turning really, really milky. So what that is it's actually starting to bond, and the dye is so that we can see it. And we'll let that sit for a few minutes, and what will happen is eventually all the sediment in the tap water will then fall to the bottom of the test tube on both sides. So if there's any sediment or anything suspended in our RO water, it will also fall to the bottom there. Now that we've run this test, I wanted to show you the results. And it's kind of disgusting, so I warn you. This here, as you can see, all that sediment at the bottom, that is what is in our water. And so I can't really tell you what that is specifically, but we know that about 50% of that is probably the calcium carbonate that I was talking about, that the hardness or the limestone that I spoke of. Now this is the RO alkaline, and as you can see, it's crystal clear. So there's no additional contaminants that have been absorbed into the water. So this is what you should be drinking, because this is nice, pure, clean water with no calcium, and this would be considered soft water. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do what's known as a TDS test. And the TDS test, what it does is it tests the water for how many parts per million of solids are in our water, okay? Typically, most of the solids that we're finding in our water here in San Diego are that calcium carbonate or that limestone or that hardness. So first I'm going to pull some water right out of our tap here, which is, a lot of people know that with tap water, most people know not to drink the tap water. The problem is that everything else we do, we use the tap water for. So washing our vegetables, making our coffee, brushing our teeth, all of that stuff we use our tap water for. So the solution a lot of times I hear from people is, well, I get bottled water, or I have a filter on my fridge. It's actually, it's very misleading that you're being protected by that. In fact, some of the bottled water we test has a very high parts per million as well. So we have our RO alkaline water and our tap water right out of the tap. So what we're going to do is we're going to use our TDS monitor here, and we're going to test the parts per million of this tap water. So we're at about 292 and rising, going up. So we're almost 300 TDS. So that's right here on our chart here of TDS water levels. That's high TDS water for tap or mineral springs. So this is very, very high parts per million. And again, we can't tell you specifically what all those parts per million are. About half of it is going to be lime and calcium carbonate, but the other half we don't necessarily know what is. So I'm going to clean off my TDS, make sure I get an accurate result here. And on my RO water, 32 parts per million. So if we refer to our chart here, 0 to 50 is ideal for our drinking water. So this is showing me that there's, the parts per million are significantly lower. So through reverse osmosis and alkaline filtration, we're getting water that's good for drinking, good for brushing your teeth, good for your coffee, things like that. So there's one more test I want to do, and this is a grains test per gallon. Okay, so this is going to tell us how hard our water actually is. So the parts per million told us that we have obviously particulates. The suspended material test is showing us, that we have what, specifically physically what we can see suspended in the water. And then the next test I'm going to use will give us our hardness. So this test right here has a 3-step approach to it, okay? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to measure out the amount of water that I need for the test. And this is testing our tap water. So we know our RO water is not going to be hard. So we don't need to bother with testing that. But this here is a hardness solution. So I'm going to put 3 drops of this. 1, 2, 3. And then I'm going to put in this dye. And the next part of this test is one drop. So the next part of this test, what happens is you count the amount of drops it takes, or the amount of grains it takes to get this water blue again. And once it turns blue, then we can identify how hard the water actually is. So we're going to count the drops here. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, so no change to the water yet. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And this is typically where you're going to see the water start to change when it's really hard. Ooh, it's even going further than that. Oh, there it goes. Okay, so 10 drops, as identified here in our chart, is what you would consider hard water. Okay, so it's no mystery that we have hard water here in San Diego, but again, we want to make sure, because the problem is that these institutions aren't looking out for your best interest. 90% of their customers are industrial and commercial, and again, only 0.5% of the water that we're getting from these municipalities is actually used in drinking or consuming. So again, to treat that would cost them way too much than what they could sell the water for. So the responsibility is ours. The responsibility to make sure that our families are safe and that we're consuming water that's allowable for drinking water consumption as far as the hardness is concerned, that we're looking out for. So thanks for spending your time with me today. I appreciate it.